According to Times Live, Gauteng, to Sowetan Live, I beg your pardon, Gauteng CoGTA MEC Mzi Khumalo believes municipalities need to look beyond electricity for revenue collection, but as a service that should be provided to people. His comments come as most municipalities are battling load shedding and backlogs in repair work. MEC Khumalo joins us now to expand on this assertion. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Maybe let's start with why municipalities are not seeing the provision of electricity as a service, but rather as revenue collection.
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. I think the point we're making in the portfolio committee meeting is that whilst municipalities are providing electricity as a service to the people, but at the same time they are utilizing the electricity as a source of revenue, because the manner in which municipality is structured is that from each service that they are providing, be it water, be it electricity, waste removal and so on, they have to get some form of revenue that will help them to sustain that particular service in the context of them paying for the workers, in the context of them investing in the infrastructure and so on. But the point that we're really emphasizing is that with the energy mix and changes that are being effected within or transformation that is taking place within the electricity industry, it will be important for municipalities to look beyond the current status quo, wherein the electricity is one source of a revenue that helps them to invest either in the infrastructure and so on. So what is the point that we're making? The point that we're making is that there's nothing wrong that would, for instance, stop municipalities from establishing power plants, be it solar power plants like we're doing with the municipality of Mirafong, which power plants will then help them to remove certain of their people or the residents they are saving from the grid, or alternatively they can sell some of the electricity that they are going to generate to the national grid as such.
What was the reception to some of those proposals, right? Because we understand you were locked in a meeting or engagement with the City of Johannesburg, City Power and Eskom on this matter, because you take a look at the City of Johannesburg, for instance, and they go off on aggressive campaigns of switching off non-payers, regardless of what your circumstance is or your alleged circumstance is. And so how were some of these proposals received?
Well, the proposal was received with an open mind, as I say, because we go in there. There's movement towards the energy mix in our country and internationally, so to speak. But so it's work in progress in a sense. If you look at a number of municipalities, particularly Johannesburg, with the kind of initiatives that they are introducing in their community. So this is a debate that is raging on. As I said, we called an expo with the Premier of the province, and we invited community structures and sectors, and we presented an 8-point plan, and in that particular meeting, certain resolutions were taken. One of the key resolutions that were taken is that as part of us mitigating this part, we've got to ensure that each and every resident who's supposed to have electricity does have. For instance, where we are now, many residents in certain part of the province, if you take the majority of wards in Khumalo City, for instance, Lusaka, the area that is next to Khumalo City, if you go to Zola, if you go to Dobsonville and other areas in Hammarskraal and so on, you'll find that many of our people do not have electricity, not because of load shedding. Because remember, we're trying to deal with the load shedding, but they don't have electricity, not because of load shedding, but because of, amongst others, vandalism that happens in our infrastructure, which is one of the points that we're raising there. But secondly, because of the challenge of transformers, which challenge is informed by, or is the causes of such is because of the overloading that many of our transformers are suffering in those particular communities. So we have resolved that we've got to replace all those transformers, but in order to do that, we've got to work with communities to ensure that we do away with illegal connection. Because if you don't do away with illegal connection, you will replace a transformer today, tomorrow that transformer has been blown. And it doesn't really help. It's not an investment that we want to engage on. Earlier on, I was in a meeting with the Premier. We agreed that we're going to intervene to ensure that we help municipalities, be it our metros, be it via city power and so on, to ensure that those transformers are being replaced. But we want to make a call to our communities. Please help us to ensure that we do away with overloading, because so long as this overloading is going to be difficult for us to replace those transformers as such. And those communities know it's about 4 to 5 years that they are suffering. So as you resolve the load shedding, you must resolve those issues as such.
Sure. I'm glad you mentioned the likes of Zola and Dobsonville. And while vandalism of infrastructure is very much a real problem, what is also a real problem is load reduction in specific sectors, right? So the University of Johannesburg did a really interesting study, the Center for Sociological Research and Practice, in April of 2022. And their report is titled Energy Racism Report. And it speaks of how certain places in Soweto, for instance, are intentionally load shed much longer than any other areas of South Africa. Not load shed, but load reduction, right? And so they speak of the disparity where you have people in Soweto bearing the brunt of this load shedding problem, where they are taken off the grid for much longer than other areas in this country. And so what do you say to people who are looking at this, and not just the people in Soweto when we speak of the Energy Racism Report, but also when you speak to people who are not receiving the very same service of electricity, be it load shedding or be it the municipalities not able to provide the load shedding, but you still have to pay for that service. And so what do you tell these people who are disgruntled that what are we paying for?
Well, let's first find out what are the causes of load reduction. And I agree in terms of the impact of it. The impact of it is that those communities that are being load reducted are then load shedded for quite a long time. There I concede. But what are the causes of load reduction? Load reduction comes as a result of non-payment or low payment of services by particular communities. So if I stay in Mohlakeng, for instance, and generally the community there is not paying, that community will be there will be load reduction as such, as part of ESCOM program of trying to mitigate the extent of load shedding as such. That's the first thing that we need to understand. The unfortunate part is that so within that community you'll find that I am paying, or a number of us are paying for their services and so on, but we get affected because, generally speaking, people do not pay. So the first thing that we want to encourage to those communities that it is time that our communities should stand up and pay for their services, because people cannot hide behind the poor. Municipalities have got policies for poor people. If I'm not working at all and there's no income in our household, there is an indigent register where I go register myself on indigent, and the free basic services are being provided to that particular household, so that we cater for the poor. But the problem is that those of us who are in a position to can pay for our services, we simply hide behind the poor. So how do we resolve that particular problem? We've got to encourage our communities to pay for their services. We've got to help municipalities to clean their indigent register so that we are sure that the many people who necessarily are not paying for their services are people who are indigent in nature, and therefore they qualify to be provided for with basic services. So those are the dynamics that are necessarily there in communities. So in suburbs, and I'm not sure why that was titled racism, but maybe it's when people were doing those parallels. In suburbs areas, majority of the people are paying for their services, therefore they will not be load there won't be a load reduction as such. They will only be load shaded as such, and that makes the difference. And we take into account that some of these deaths that are there in our communities are historical in nature, and there's a particular way we're addressing them. If you follow the development within the electricity sector, the Treasury, together with government, have taken a decision that there must be what we call debt relief. In other words, municipalities that owe Eskom will have to go to Treasury and say, we owe Eskom this much because of the following reason, and Treasury will then scrap those debts, and therefore there will be some form of relief from many of those communities. I'm aware that all our municipalities in Gauteng are participating as such. And I know, for instance, if you take Randwest City, it's one of those municipalities that approval has been granted by Treasury that there can be that form of a debt relief. So we've put quite a number of mechanisms in place to try and mitigate and do away with it. Our objective as provincial government is that by the 1st of January 2024, we must have sorted out all of these particular issues. That is why we've just decided, together with the Premier, that one of the things we're going to do with immediate effect is that we are going to ensure that all of those transformers are being replaced in all of those communities that are being affected.
Okay. Bob Khumalo, I think we have a very different understanding of the racism report and the indigent register, right? But I'm going to need your guidance because you know better in this space. So when you speak of the racism report, my understanding from that report is that naturally, whether people pay or don't pay, right, there's load reduction in these spaces in Soweto. And then when you mentioned the communities standing up and paying their bills, there's an issue in Soweto as well. I speak for Soweto because that's the area that I am aware of in terms of some of the problems that are happening, where you will find a community collectively, they will switch the lights off. So when you speak of an indigent register, it's quite interesting. And they will demand that that entire community pays a certain portion. Let's say it's 5,000 Rand or 6,000 Rand. But whether you pay or not, you are included with those people that do not pay. So those are the two issues that are happening in Soweto. And then when you go to the suburbs, they do not switch off for the entire area. They will switch Utuduzile off because she did not pay her bill. It's not collective punishment. And so please help me understand those two dynamics.
Well, the first thing to say is that in areas where there's non-payment and for instance low payment, Eskom's approach is to introduce what they call a load reduction. But I don't think it would be correct that we should say that the load reduction happens because of race, this particular race of people and so on and so on. It just does happen that given our history in this particular country, communities that get affected by this are particularly African communities or black communities. That's where the challenge is. The point I'm taking is that instead of targeting certain of individuals that are necessarily not paying, load reduction affects everyone. And I've made that point that if I stay in Moslaking and I'm paying, because I belong to an area that is low paying or non-paying, therefore I'll be affected with this load reduction. So that's the first issue that we want to address and do away with. The second part is that where people have to pay, for instance, 6,000 for reconnection and all of those kind of things, it's because Eskom wants to replace the transformer, and therefore there must be that contribution that comes from communities. And the reason why that has been the point is that because of the overloading of the system, illegal connection and all of those kind of things, Eskom would have replaced these transformers in the past, but this problem, you replace it today, 5 days down the line, it blows, and you have to replace it again, and all of those kind of things. And they came to an extent that communities will have to contribute to that. We want to do away with that. That's where we're coming in, and the decision that we've taken together with the Premier on behalf of provincial government is to primarily to address those particular things. So we're coming in and we're saying to communities, we will assist to ensure that there's a replacement of those transformers. However, you've got to assist us to ensure that we do away with illegal connection and therefore to mitigate this overloading as such. So from my point of view, I would not want to look at it from a philosophical outlook and therefore coming to a conclusion that these things are happening because people who are staying in Soweto are black people or something of that nature. No, it's because of we've got to look at the causes. What causes this and what are the mitigation that the people are putting in place? Well, we might come to a different conclusion in terms of the solution. For instance, I do not believe that load reduction is a solution because it affects even those people who are paying as such.
I think maybe it's a matter of miscommunication because that is not what it is communicated to community members about those 6,000 rand or that 6,000 rand, for instance. I'm not sure whether people are aware that it's to fix transformers. Rather, it's to say, if you don't pay it, we won't reconnect you. But thank you very much for your indulgence this afternoon. MEC for CoGTA in Gauteng, Khumalo.